Hey, what's going on, guys? Um, so I was encouraged by a friend of mine tonight at a bar that we frequented for some years in our quiet little suburban town of Thousand Oaks, California, where the two of us have lived a good portion of our lives. Probably myself somewhere around the neighborhood of, I don't know, moved out that way in 2007, so about 10 years. Um, and his encouragement, his suggestion to me was really, it really caught me off guard because I'd had this idea earlier today. And I had this idea while I was filming a video to post on the YouTube for myself in an effort to get a job with a tutoring company. I wanted to see how I interacted with the camera, what sort of I don't know, a presence I had. And, you know, I thought to myself, I could do this. I could co-opt this whole entire platform, this video sharing platform um, that I'm so naturally averse to. The idea of sort of sharing yourself electronically with people, or just the idea of social media in general. It tends to be such a put off to me. If for any other reason, then it sort of tends to promote disembodied interactions between human beings, which there seems to be something intrinsically bad to me about this. And I'm going to definitely go into that more later. Um, but that having been said, um, the idea I had was, why not sit in front of a webcam for at least 100 days and just talk, just free associate the way one would within the context of a session of psychoanalysis. And that's really where my chief interest has been academically, probably since I was 19 years old. I remember being 19 years old and being, attending the community college. It's just down the street from me over here now, where I live. And I remember having a professor who really, tried to challenge me, a philosophy professor. His name was Frank Waters. And Frank had written a dissertation on the French philosopher and psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan. I had never heard of this name before prior to meeting Frank. And so as a 19-year-old kid, I decided I was going to pick up some reading on Lacan, and I did. I picked up, in fact, Bruce Fink's Clinical Introduction to Lacanian Psychoanalysis. And I remember reading through it as a 19-year-old and just being in awe of the entire thing and just being so astounded. Even the first page, talks about this old psychologist joke. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb really has to want to change. And so that was the quip. And Mr. Fink, who is the premier by most people, by many people's analysis, the sort of most preeminent translator and interpreter of Lacan into the English language from his native French. That's Bruce Fink, and so he goes on in this page, this first page, to say, the truth that's sort of expressed in this joke is the fact that no one really wants to change. We're way too invested, in fact, Fink goes on to say, in our symptoms. We're way too invested in these behaviors that offer us what Freud called substitute satisfactions for enjoying ourselves in a more straightforward and a less cryptic and ciphered way, right? And so, all that stuff has to be unpacked. What does cryptic and what does ciphered mean in this context? What are we talking about? How do people enjoy themselves in ways that are it's not clear exactly what it is, what they're getting out of it, you know, and it's a really interesting question, right? And so I remember encountering this notion as a 19-year-old and thinking to myself, huh, I've never heard anyone talk about the human condition this way before. I've never heard anyone just matter-of-factly address this truth that, like, I felt and known in my heart for so many years, growing up in a very difficult family environment with a highly erratic, disturbed sibling, my older brother, in fact, who, I remember at one point when I was 16 years old, I remember, you know, he had just gone off the deep end for what seemed like, you know, we just lost track of the number of times at that point. And I remember just there was like this pleasant interaction I was having with him. And I remember getting this fateful feeling, like, enjoy this, James, I said to myself. This is going to be one of the last times you're really going to be able to connect with and enjoy this person's company. And I knew that that was true. I knew that that at least should have been true. I knew that there was no need for me to associate with him much further. In fact, I knew it was harmful. I knew it had been harmful to be around him for so many years. I knew his influence was just completely destructive, and that what it did to my life was it just he basically encouraged me to adopt the sort of posture of the world that he had, which was one of just sort of a refusal to engage with it because he couldn't find himself in the exact position that he wanted to be in. In any case, so encountering this idea in Fink's book for the first time was just like, oh my God, somebody put a name to this thing that I've known, for so long. And, then as a 19-year-old kid, having had those kinds of insights, when I was, say 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, it was like somebody just spelled it right out. And, I was immediately just taken with this in a very powerful way. So I read on, right? So that book, Bruce Fink's Clinical Introduction to Lacanian Psychoanalysis, it's very, very pithy, very good, very technical, and Fink does a really good job of breaking down a lot of some of the more technical Lacanian ideas, from symbolic castration to the mirror phase to triangulation to there's so many of these different tropes, these structuralist notions that Fink does such a good job of spelling out: hysteria, obsession, neurosis, perversion, psychosis, these categories and these ideas, and I remember being so taken with it, and I guess that's part of the point of this channel, is to take what I've gleaned from the time that I've spent, sort of within this world of Lacanianism for, I've been dabbling in both the ideas and the approach to therapy for so long, since I was 19, 33 now, so it's been about 14 years, right? Of course, Lacan would call therapy, call it analysis, right? And there's a major distinction to be had there. It's not just a nominal difference. But so the point of this channel, point of me starting with this thing, to the best of my knowledge, as much as this sort of freewheeling, rambling, sort of free association that I'm giving you here, can pin it down, is to try and honor the spirit of Lacanian analysis, in the absence of any real analyst. And that to me is the exciting part about this experiment, is that my analyst is going to be you. my audience, right? Uh, this is really daunting for me. This scares me for so many reasons. Obviously, just offering up all this kind of personal information, this kind of vulnerability. Ooh, yeah, it makes me cringe. But I think that it's just a commitment that I have to stick to at this point. I think there's so much to be gained, and I don't think anyone's ever done anything like this before, or even attempted it. And I think that's part of the reason why there's so much to be mined here, and I think that there's something of real value that we might be able to dig up. So I'm willing to take this risk. I'm willing to make an experiment on myself and to disclose, many things about my own personal history, under the rubric of these sort of analytic guidelines, psychoanalytic guidelines that I've digested in years and years of study. When I was 19, shortly after that time, I transferred away to USC, got my bachelor's degree in philosophy, had a very interesting experience there in terms of learning to engage with the world, learning to socialize myself as someone who was coming from a very, stern and rigid religion. And, from there, I went on to get a master's degree, a one-of-a-kind master's degree, in fact, in philosophy and psychoanalysis. It is no longer offered by the University of Essex. This was about 10 years ago. I was 23 when I finished with the degree. And so the point, again, of this channel is to stop hiding under the rock, as it were, and to take, the due diligence that I've done to absorbing all these ideas and these notions, these techniques over the years, to try and apply them to myself, with the caveat that there has to be some kind of otherness, some kind of alterity involved in this process, some other supposed to know, which is the effective condition of any sort of analytic work or psychoanalytic work proceeding effectively. And so YouTube, you're my other supposed to know, other who is supposed to know. You are supposed to know the meaning of my symptoms. You are the place, the tribunal, the elder, the authority to which I appeal. That's supposed to be the thing, the body of laws and knowledge that without which my speech itself doesn't even make sense, right? You are the repository that understands the grammar of my very language. And that having been said, the point of this entire experiment is for me to give you these messages, as ciphered as they are, and for us to decipher them together, and for us to sort of make sense of my own unconscious mind. I think it's a very bold, daunting, and exciting ordeal. So, I mean, where to begin? I don't know. I think it may be good in this first video session to sort of try and establish some guidelines and some parameters. I'm going to obviously go off on a lot of sort of theoretical tangents, so I can help you guys to understand, how to characterize what it is that's going on as I sort of divulge a lot of this, deeply personal information about myself. But I guess the first thing that I feel really compelled to address is, I guess, there's the first rule of psychoanalysis. This is the same in Freudian analysis as it is in Lacanian, and that's that there really is no rule other than, there's an imperative to speak whatever it is that comes to mind. The extent to which I'm going to be able to do this, that, there's something a little bit questionable and scary about that. But look, right there's the other thing. just without me even having to sort of consciously or thematically disclose, I've already done it. I said, I and I'm doing it again, right? So I'm stuttering, I'm slurring, my tongue is slipping, I'm using words. I said questioning in place of the phrase question, or the term questionable, and I just used the term phrase in in place of the term word. So this kind of stuff, and this is a precept of particularly Lacanian psychoanalysis. All of these disruptions in one's efforts to speak one's mind, slips of the tongue, repetitions of phrase, odd linguistic formations such as spoonerisms, where letters are swapped between phrases like drain damage, for instance. Lapses, right? Pauses, hesitations in one's speech, double entendres, triple entendres. All of these things, these are the ways in which the unconscious mind speaks itself, right? And there's another Lacanian precept that's really important to grasp, and that's I speak. Each of us speak. And when we speak, our body also speaks, but we don't know what it is that our body is saying, right? So, all these people talk about body language, you see on Fox News, all these idiots get together and try and interpret Obama's body language. Well, this means that. A bunch of bullshit, right? So it's not that, his body language isn't saying something. It's that all the inferences they're making about it are illegitimate. And that's just because, one rule for the analyst within the context of psychoanalysis, in observing, ciphered, meaningful bodily behaviors that are attempts in every case to express something unconscious. The analyst is required to address the matter with the patient and to get that meaning to be spoken, right? Because only when it's spoken, can that unconscious, entity, element, desire, that repressed valence or meaning, only when it's spoken can it be properly recognized, right? Both by the analysand versus talking and the analyst. So that's a lot of stuff that I've just thrown at you guys. A lot of theory, a bunch of stuff about information about me personally, a sort of overview about what we're going to attempt to accomplish here with this YouTube experiment. But I think it pretty much covers the groundwork of this entire thing fairly well. You'll have to excuse the mess in the background. This is awful. This is my room. I am something of a major slob. I'm gonna try and clean this up. Maybe there's no sense in me apologizing about it at this point, but I feel a little self-conscious. I want this thing to look good, to be somewhat appealing, but maybe there's actually some appeal in this, and maybe there's some unconscious significance. Oh, there certainly is some unconscious significance in this, and as I speak about it, it's becoming conscious. There's something about living in clutter and refusing to clean some shit up that has some kind of symbolic significance to it, right? So we'll work on that together, right? You may see that even this action was sufficient for me to change and to try and clean some shit up, right? And that's the hope, right? That's the major hope, is that in doing this, this entire project is going to be an effective substitute for me paying, $50 some odd an hour to an actual analyst to try and work through all of my shit and my demons. We'll see how it shakes out, I guess. I'm trying to think what else I have to say. We're almost at the 20-minute mark here. This could be a short session. Guess what? Here's another thing about Lacanian analysis that's so, I find so uncanny and so amazing, and something that differentiates it so strongly from all other forms of psychotherapy, and that's that the sessions are of a variable length, and there's a very, very real, significant, important, interesting purpose to this whole thing, and that is that, you know, the analyst needs to cut the session off at a time that he or she deems to be appropriate given the content of the analysand's speech. So when the analysand says something particularly telling or revealing, or something that, you know, the analyst takes to be important, or something that the analyst even wants the analysand to take to be important, you know, on a temporary basis, right? When a truth of a certain potency is spoken, the analyst severs the session. It says, let's stop right there. And what this does is it dialecticizes or dialectizes the analysand's desire. It puts it in motion. It gets the analysand thinking, okay, well, why did he stop it there? And so the work of analysis then proceeds between sessions, and the analysand is, you know, begins to contemplate what and associate around that gesture on the part of the analyst. And this is, you know, this is the work of psychoanalysis, right? And this is lots of work that gets done between sessions, right? So with that having been said, you know, there's not going to be any formal length that I'm going to adhere to. I'll just talk as long as it seems natural. I'll try and keep things shorter than an hour. I think that that's going to be a very long session, in fact. You know, I guess what I'll try and close with is the thought that I'm really looking forward to doing this, and I'm interested to see how long I can keep it up. Right? We're going to dig into some really uncomfortable stuff. It's going to be pretty fucking gnarly. You can rest assured. You know, and this is something that I've established some skill with, I think, over the years in terms of my reflection and my writing and my speaking with you know, whoever has an ear to hear my bullshit and my story, and you know, but it's something that I think I've learned to do out of really a necessity to try and patch things together and to try and make sense of a life that's, you know, it's been hard. I mean, and nobody's life is easy. So I'm not going to try and paint this like, oh, I've got it so rough and you guys don't understand. No, that's not even it at all, right? Please don't even imagine that. Even though that's definitely sort of a sort of symptomatic mode that, you know, we can all fall into, right? You know, sort of looking at our plight and imagining that somehow it's you know, extreme to the point where you know whatever damage has been done is just, you know, it's an insult or an aggravation that nobody should have to bear. By the same token, you know, just because that's sort of a quintessentially neurotic attitude, it doesn't mean that it's not true, right? I mean, in the case of an individual. So, you know, I'll bracket, you know, what I was saying previously with that, you know, and I'll sort of qualify it, right? Yeah, because there's been some shit, you know, in everybody's life, and I guess the point of me putting these videos out there is for us to dig into that shit, my shit, and for us to see if there's any diamonds or gold in it, metaphorically speaking, right? If there's anything of value that's just sort of, you know, tangled up within, you know, this sort of existential manure, right? Is there something that can grow from it? You know, is there something worth holding on to? Is there something to hope for? That's what this is about. I'm so excited to have you guys on board with me. I'm so excited, you know, at the thought of developing a viewership on this thing, because it's my story, and you know, I think I'm equipped with the tools to tell it in a way that should make it very compelling. And you know, I guess I'll close with a thought. from one of my favorite philosophers, who's Friedrich Wilhelm von Joseph von Schelling, where he says, "In the life of every man is contained the story of the world writ small." So that will be my parting thoughts. So think on that. While we're gone here, that'll be my challenge to you. I'll switch roles and I'll play the role of the analyst for a second. Meditate on that. Between now and the next time when you see me on here, think about how everybody's story converges on something universal, and how we're all human beings, and our experience, there's so many contours to it that we tend to share, as much as we're all unique, and as Herman Hesse put it, we're experiments of nature that just can't be replicated, in terms of the way in which this sort of concatenation of forces and place and time and space, and the way it all meets together and converges to create a life that is one of a kind in every instance. So there's that sort of dialectic between difference and identity, right, that we're going to be playing with here. We're going to be definitely, it's going to be a major theme that you'll be able to extrapolate if you're at least been thoughtful. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. Let me stop again right there. So we've got Shona's quote: in the life of every person lies the story of the world writ small. That's my parting thought for you. Think on that. See what it means to you. Comment away if you care to. And let's end our session right there. All right, YouTube. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.